Ian, I'm interested in this concept of education. This is obviously a complicated space and probably complicating. It's getting more complicated. How do you, as a brand marketer, enable your folks to better understand these issues, better understand, for example, what offerings are in the marketplace, what measurement developments are taking place to better inform your spend?
I mean, we have a pretty robust internal training program, though I think one of the things we've talked a lot about is the notion of generalists versus specialists. So I think we'd like to have the brand marketers focus on their fundamental jobs of brand buildings, consumer insight, and then let the specialist corporate team working with the agency specialists get a lot deeper into the space. I mean, the reality of this marketplace is if you look away for a second, you've missed something. Right. And for a brand marketer, marketing can sometimes be like half of their job. They are generalists, they're general managers, they have supply chain, they have finance, they have operations. So all of marketing is half of their job. Media may be a quarter of that. Digital may be some portion of that. Programmatic might be some piece of that. So I don't think it's fair to expect them to be super deep in that particular space. I want them to set great objectives for us, have a clear understanding of KPIs, have a good understanding of their target, and then we need to use the rest of the ecosystem of specialists to really enable them to the job of brand building and business impact. Mm-hmm. So our training is focused on maybe the core of their job, and then having specialist talent fulfill some of the marketplace intelligence and use and application that you talked about.
Steve, how does Nielsen interact with folks that are trying to get their hands around this evolving marketplace? What's your level of engagement with brands, with agencies?
Well, I think we've sort of morphed our model pretty dramatically. What we used to do was work very closely with mainly the TV networks. Mm-hmm. Now we spend as much, if not more, time with all the digital players, including folks like Dave's organization, and also the brands themselves. And in the last 18 to 24 months, Terry, we've I think just started to figure out how to work with the agencies. I think that's been something where we haven't been particularly skilled. I think we're getting better at it. We're not all the way there yet. But the agencies are definitely our friend, not a foe. Mm-hmm. So in other words, what we want to be able to do is provide our data to everyone in as flexible a form as possible. Mm-hmm. And be agnostic as to whether they're sort of the buy or the sell side or somewhere in between.
Right. Doug, does that resonate with you in terms of how you're interacting with all sources of information to solve client needs?
Yeah, I think it is continuing to evolve. So, understanding more about who the audiences are that we're trying to reach, we call them our most valuable audiences, and working with Nielsen is one way of certainly doing that. Exploring new evaluation techniques as well. So we're looking at things like agent-based modeling and attribution modeling as well to start to get to some of those shorter-term sales, understanding the impact that what we're putting into the marketplace and how we're spending money and how we're leveraging earned and owned media is actually driving those sales results. So we have to be continually looking at, not just some of the things that are evolving from a technology side, but also the evolutions that's happening, from the measurement side as well.
So, Steve, you mentioned historically working with the large broadcasters, and we have a very innovative broadcaster on the next panel. But Dave, I guess if we had a major broadcaster, a U.S.-based major broadcaster here on this panel, would they be head nodding around a lot of these issues, or are they taking a little bit? Are they looking at these developments as being a little bit more threatening?
I think they would be head nodding. I came out of the newspaper industry. And that industry was entirely stocked with Luddites who didn't want to change, and mostly because in the United States they really had local monopoly status, so they didn't have to. But television industry may not move as fast as many of us, but it's a highly competitive oligopoly, and they know they need to move. I think most TV companies would like to have their cake and eat it too. They would like to hold on to things as it is and slowly add pieces. So, I think they would head nod, but they would still try to, take it at their pace.
I think, Dave, just to add to that, I think we're focused really on the targeting and the delivery of the audience, and we've talked about getting to that most valuable consumer. I think what we also we haven't really talked about this, and this is where I think the traditional network companies would be head nodding as well, which is there's multiple roles that video is playing in a communication and a brand marketing plan. Part of that is about driving penetration, building awareness, and hitting that consumer throughout that purchase cycle. And we want to get as close to that point of sale as possible. We want to reach those most valuable consumers, and we want to transact, convert those consumers into transaction. But some brands actually need to leverage the relationship and the money that they're spending with networks for content. And so we need to start to think about how we divide up the money in terms of the role to just reach consumers with content that an ad agency is producing or that a client has produced. But also, we're now looking at how do we leverage the relationship we have with media owners to create and bring content into the ecosystem that we can further leverage. So how you divide up and how you have conversations with networks is a different conversation depending upon what those needs are.
So Steve, you deal with them every day. Do you get a sense that they're getting it?
Yeah, I think there's been a sea change in the sort of the attitudes, but equally importantly the confidence of the broadcast and major cable network groups. I think if we'd had this conversation 3 or 4 years ago and we were talking about digital and we're talking about digital video, many of the TV network executives would have been looking at their shoes a little bit, thinking, well, I don't have Facebook and I don't have Twitter and I haven't invested in YouTube, and therefore what am I going to do? I think a couple of things have happened. The first is they've realized that consumers are consuming more video. So all of our research says that we are all spending more time every day consuming video, firstly. Secondly, consumers prefer professionally produced content. And thirdly, professionally produced content is hard to make. It really is hard to make, and I think we've got some real examples of success here in the way the videology guys have worked on their business model. But it's hard to make, and the TV networks are good at it. And so I think they put those things together and they say, you know what? It's not necessarily all of ours to win, which it might have been in the days of the sort of nice oligopoly. But they're in a good position if they play their cards right, and they've got a lot of decisions to make around business model and so forth. But the quality of television programming that we've now got, particularly in the US, is unprecedented.
Yep.
I mean, it's tremendous. And I think that augurs well. If they continue to produce that stuff, consumers will continue to go to it. Doug and all of his team will continue to invest in it. And, the future will be bright. But it is definitely a transition that's going on.
Right. Well, I think one thing that's clear is that this is going to evolve rapidly, and agility may be the key word that came out of this. Thank you, everybody.